Welcome to the Live True podcast. I'm David Lovelace.
And I'm Corone Lovelace. And this is the podcast dedicated to true spiritual living.
Join us for a candid conversation around personal spiritual secrets that are revolutionizing the way that we see ourselves, the way that we love and relate to others, and enable us to do our work with even more fruitfulness and fulfillment. We're sharing some of our successes and failures, as well as interviews and insights from some of the best spiritual leaders, psychologists, and wisdom teachers. We're here to help you live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity.
Today we'll be talking about our story and what has brought us here to do this podcast.
There's a lot in all of that.
Yeah, sure
Yes.
is.
But before we do that, why don't we catch people up with what we've been up to in recent weeks, how we closed out our summer, how we've been moving into this fall. We had a pretty important occasion a few weeks ago.
Our Ruby anniversary.
That's right. It was our Ruby anniversary. Did you know that before I knew that?
No, actually, I think we found it out at the same time. We were researching what the 40th anniversary, wedding anniversary means, and it's a Ruby anniversary, according to someone. I don't know who decided that. But.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping you would be impressed by the fact that I would know such a thing and that I'd done my homework.
I was impressed.
And so anyway, we had a great time. We were out in California at one of the most scenic spots on the whole planet.
It was beautiful being able to see the whales on the west coast of California and the mountains, and we love the water and the mountains together, and it was just an amazingly beautiful time. Wonderful time.
Yes, it was. It was. Should we tell them all the details?
No, well, I don't know. What's this rated? What's this podcast rated?
That's true. All right, let's back out of that part.
Just suffice it to say, it was glorious.
It was glorious.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we've been back here during September. We've been back into our regular rhythm of each week where we do a lot of writing. We do coaching of individuals, couples, and leaders. And then we've been doing some speaking as well. And but then the surprise for the fall has been a brand new hobby for us that our family has gotten us into.
Yeah, our grandson, who's 13, wanted to have a fantasy football league. And so he invited some of us in the family to take part in it. And I love football. I'm, from way back. I really do love football, but I've never played fantasy football or even been interested in it. But because he was inviting, I thought, okay, I'll learn something new. I'll give it a shot. And it was pretty funny. Just the whole process. I mean, we didn't have any instructions. We didn't have anybody to teach us how to do this at all. And we were really so novice, and the day came for the draft, and
this was just a couple of weeks ago.
It was just really funny. I was on my iPhone just, doing it. I was supposed to be on my computer, but I was doing this draft on my iPhone and yelling from one room, and you were in the other, and I was trying to get somebody to help me figure out how to do this.
Plus, you were upset when other people stole your players just before you were about to draft
I had done
them.
this research, and I wanted these certain players, and somebody right before me would get it, and I was like, oh, I can't believe that happened. And then, So long story short, though, I think we should just say by week 2, I'd love to be able to tell you guys
Oh, dear. Here it comes.
that my team, which is called The Team to Beat, my team, is ahead of 8. I'm the number one of 8.
Of 8 teams in the league.
8 teams in the league that all have male owners. I'm the only female owner of the team.
Yes, you are in number 1 right now
Yes.
at this point in the season.
My daddy would be so proud.
He would. Do you know what place my team is in?
I think you're in next to last.
We won't say who's last, but I'm next to last. That's not good. Hey, what'd you think of my name I came up with for my team? Zoom Zoom
I
Boys.
was very confused about that name.
There was a car commercial years ago that was like, Zoom Zoom. And that was kind of like their signature slogan. And when I heard it, I thought, well, that's me. I'm a Zoom Zoom guy.
Are you really?
Right?
Okay.
Or perhaps that's part of that false identity.
It's a little weird.
I just took on. It's a little weird to you. Okay.
A little weird.
Well, whatever.
A little weird.
So I doubt if we'll do a whole podcast on fantasy football.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But
Although fantasy is a part of,
that's true.
some of the stuff we'll be talking about.
That's true. So we'll keep you guys posted on all that. And then obviously we've been up to getting ready for this inaugural podcast today that we are very excited about. By the way, this podcast is brought to you by youlivetrue.com. youlivetrue.com. It's an online site that's dedicated to help you live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity. You can find out more information there at that website, youlivetrue.com.
So let's get right into this episode. Why should we live true? I want to tell you, first of all, a little bit about some circumstances in my life that kind of brought me to being more aware of how to live truer in my life than I ever have. It was a time a number of years ago where things were just breaking down. I recognized that I wasn't as close to God as I wanted to be. I wasn't as happy in my life. I felt like I was losing touch with what my purpose was. And it just, every area of my life just kind of seemed to be disappointing and uncomfortable. And even relationally, I felt some relationships were just, I keep hitting snags in certain relationships. And I was just going, what is going on? And so somebody handed me a book called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a good friend of ours now. And in that book talked about some retreats that she gives to leaders, church leaders. And I attended that retreat called at the Transforming Center in Chicago for a couple of years. And in that retreat, one of the sessions was on a certain kind of assessment tool that is used to help determine trouble spots in our personality. And that one tool was really the catalyst for, I think, beginning to enlighten me and open me up to see things about myself that were causing my own troubles. I thought other things were causing me trouble.
Right.
And I came to learn that actually I was creating a lot of my own problems, even though everyone else could see that I was doing this, but I couldn't see it. And so this particular tool was revolutionizing the way that I looked at myself. And as a result, now we are certified in teaching and using this particular tool that we'll tell you about another time. And it is having a fantastic impact on a lot of lives. And you also have experienced what some of that feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both pretty reflective people.
Yeah.
And thought we understood most everything there is to know about oneself, even though that sounds like a pretty darn arrogant statement.
Well, I think what you
given
mean
the complexity of a human being's life.
Yeah.
But it definitely helped us gain a greater sense of self-knowledge and clarity. Mm-hmm. We both know that in spiritual transformation circles, most people think they just need to have a greater knowledge of God,
right,
and that will lead to life change.
Yeah.
And we've seen, as well as all the Christian mystics down through all the ages, have seemed to have a universal agreement around it's actually a combination of a greater knowledge of God plus a greater knowledge of yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we leave out a lot.
Yep.
We don't understand that it's actually the knowledge of ourself that brings us to a greater knowledge of God even as well.
Yeah, exactly. But more about that another time. We figure we should kick off this inaugural podcast by just telling you a little bit more about who we are. Many of you listening know us. You know us real well. And then there are many others of you that don't really know who we are. So we thought we'd give you a little background and context concerning our particular story, and then how we believe it might be able to inform and help whatever part of the journey you're in your particular story. So both of us, we've been followers of Jesus for 40 years plus. Something like that.
Yeah, more than that, probably.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. Been pretty darn serious about that all along. It's been something's been extremely real, meaningful, powerful, has affected us on so many different levels.
Yeah.
So that's a part of who we've been. We've also, as we alluded to a moment ago, we've been married. We've been married to one another for 40 years now, and in this ruby state now. So
Yes, and we've had many, many highs, and we've had a few pretty low lows
yeah,
that we'll talk to you about later.
yeah, that's right. We live here in Orlando right now, whenever we're not living down in the islands.
Right.
Hang on, which is never. So I guess we live full time here in
We
Orlando.
kind of do, yeah.
I'm sorry, I slipped off into fantasy there
You
for
did,
just a moment. I
yeah.
apologize for
Yeah.
that. We're some other things, aren't we?
Well, we're parents of 3 sons. They're all in their 30s. They all each have children. We're about to become grandparents of 8 in a few weeks. Our 8th grandchild will be born.
Kids, Lord have mercy and help me.
We're not old enough yet to be grandparents of that many
We
kids.
are not. I mean, given the fact that we're just 41,
Yeah,
and
that's
I mean,
weird.
how's that even possible?
Yeah.
But
And we
you
have
know, I know you don't like this idea, but I do believe with 8 grandchildren, I'm going to require everyone wearing name tags.
You probably will at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah. We also have been on the journey of discovery. It's spiritual leaders and spiritual followers of Jesus. And we've just constantly been trying to find what is the next thing in God that we really haven't learned yet. I love this idea that we all need to be having beginner's mind, that we don't ever arrive
Yep.
in our spiritual life. We really don't ever arrive. We know that to be true, but a lot of times I don't think we act that way. I think we act like, oh, I think I figured it out now. I think I know what's up and what's down and what's left and what's right. And we don't recognize that actually it's an ever growing and constantly expanding experience with God that we actually are invited into.
That's right. So that's a little bit about who we've been. I want to tell you a little bit more about my wife and my lifelong tag team partner sitting here beside me, Corone Lovelace. She's been a best-selling author for a number of years. You've written like 10, 11 books, written and then co-authored about 11 different books. And you just, I mean, honestly, I got to tell you again, I tell you this all the time, you're just extremely gifted writer.
Thanks.
And you run circles around me when it comes to that. Corone's also a fabulous artist, and I love to see her express her creativity that way. And then she's just been a terrific teacher over these many years. What I've noticed is just how compassionate she is in dealing with people. She's a very good intuitive coach. She mentioned a while ago that she's also become a certified Enneagram specialist. And really for more than 25 years, I mean, a quarter of a century, that's a long time. Did
you have to say it like that?
No, probably didn't.
Okay.
But for a long period of time, you used your strategic and leadership and artistic gifts to serve on the executive team at Discovery Church here in Orlando. Corone's also spoken at a number of conferences and retreats over the years, but she has a real passion to see everyone, but especially women, couples, and leaders, identify just the hidden internal issues that really hinder them from experiencing the maximum joy, grace, and fulfillment that God has available for them. So that's a little more color commentary that I wanted you to know about in my wife and lifelong tag team partner.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. And let me tell you a little bit more about my husband, David. For those of you that don't know him very well, he's been a leadership coach, a pastor to pastors, and he's extremely strategic. He understands the big picture of what goes on in a spiritual community. And he's been a spiritual advisor to churches and businesses and has done this in over 50 countries. And he served as the founding pastor of Discovery Church in Orlando for 29 years. And under David's leadership, Discovery both planted churches as well as grew a vibrant community, offering multi-site church experiences that together have strengthened thousands of people's lives every week for decades. And we're really pleased and proud of that.
Grateful.
Discovery Church has been identified by John Vaughn as one of America's most influential churches. And so we feel very honored and privileged to have been a part of that experience. And that actually was such a privilege to serve.
It was.
And to work in this community and then in other communities in the nation and beyond.
That's right. So we've had all that going on, yet in the midst of just enormous, what we felt like was personal and what I felt like was personal, family, as well as professional success, I have to be honest with you, and many of you know this is a part of our story and mine. I experienced a devastating failure. A number of years ago, I engaged in a relationship of infidelity. Then 2.5 years ago, I decided to tell my wife and kids and friends about this relationship of infidelity that existed earlier. I got to tell you, at that point, life literally fell apart. I ended up resigning from Discovery Church, and we lost much of what was very dear and meaningful to us. I actually wrote a blog about this recently that you'll find in our show notes, which we'll talk more about at the end of the podcast today. But it was just called An Open Letter to My Wife, to God, and to You. I get really personal about me and my story in that particular blog and the miracle that's occurred, but I really believe it's a picture of a miracle that can occur for you. So what's happened over the last several years through a lot of rigorous personal work, prayer, the help of my very faithful wife, Crone, faithful friends, and excellent counselors, the consequences of that experience really have become my life-defining teacher.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating to me that on one hand, I've experienced the last couple of years a level of hell that I never knew existed on this side of eternity. But at the same time, I've got to tell you, I've also experienced a level of heaven on this side of eternity that I never knew existed. And it's really from the context of the highest of highs in life and the lowest of lows that we've been able to find life-altering breakthroughs that really have brought us to where we are today. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Sustain us to this very day. And that's why we feel really privileged to be able to come into your life in several different ways and offer you whatever hard-won, hard-fought wisdom that we've gained from it, the experience from it all, and then some transformational tools that we've discovered, and then some that God's given us the privilege of authoring and creating as well. So we want you to know that, you know, no matter where you've been, we get you.
Yeah. So if you're married, we understand what married life is like, of course. We've been at it quite a while. No marriage is the same. All your marriages are different, but yet there are a lot of similarities in the way that we have to learn to interact and react and accept one another. And so we've had a lot of super huge lessons that we've learned in this area, and we want to be able to pass those on to you. If you're single,
we absolutely get you, because obviously we've been single before.
Yes.
And then we've had some very dear friends that have been single and are single now.
Yeah.
Either they've never been married or they've been through painful divorce. We have friends that have lost their spouses as well, and have been engaged in that life. And we've been engaged as they've been living their lives and seeking help at that point.
Yeah. And if you're a parent of young kids, all the way to empty nesters, we get what all those different seasons are like, and we appreciate the circumstances that you live in, the stresses and the responsibilities, the physical, emotional, mental things that are required, and all the dynamics of the relationships that are involved in family life. So we want to be able to pass on to you some of the things that we are learning and have learned about living together in family, in relationship, that can actually overcome a lot of the challenges that we face in understanding and perceiving one another.
Yeah. Also, those of you that are empty nesters, that's the stage we're in right now. And it is such a unique season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And if that's where you are, we get where you are. Also, if you're in a leadership role of any type, whether it's in a company or business or ministry, we get in spades the joys and the stresses, the vulnerabilities and the high points, and the strange, odd mixture of the greatest of highs and the greatest of lows that actually exist within your interior as you're leading. We get you. We really do. And, maybe you're today listening to this and you just, you feel fabulous about your life, and you really tuned into this podcast because you want to find out if there's even more available fabulous out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and there is. Or maybe you're listening today and you just feel stuck. You feel stuck in your life or in your relationships, or you feel stuck in your walk with God. Maybe you're just doubting this whole thing, and you would really love to chuck it all if you had that as an option. So what we're really trying to say is, no matter where you are, we get what you've gone through, or we get what you're going through
on
right
some
now.
level.
Yeah,
on some level, because all of us experience a human commonality that, you know, we are unique and yet we are the same. And that's probably one of the most profound things that we've even learned, even in the last little while, is that, yes, we get to be unique and special and one of a kind, but we are also very much one and have lots of things in common that we can share with one another and support one another, build one another up with.
Yeah, exactly. So let's tell you some, just several things real quick that we've been up to this past year in this current season of our journey and of our story, because a lot of people have been asking and saying, you know, gosh, with all you guys are gaining and learning what's emerging, the goodness that's emerging, the miracle, gosh, that's been emerging from your story. You know, we would love some investments from you back into our lives. So let's tell them several ways that we're seeking to do that right now. And then we'll talk about how the podcast fits into all of this.
Okay. Well, we send out a free, practical, gut honest blog right to your inbox every week. We are really passionate to pass on all the secrets that we've been learning to radically improve the way that we see and experience life and our relationships and leadership. And we want this to be stuff that you can really use, because that's what we like, practical, usable things. And so we want to pass that on to you in that way. And we want to help you overcome long-standing issues, blind spots, patterns that have really hindered you from accessing the kind of life, love, and leadership that you've been dreaming of. That's one of the things we're up to.
Yeah, and we really enjoy doing it. Typically, blogs, I was thinking about how long they are. Usually it takes maybe 10 minutes to read them.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and they're easy to pass on as well, and you can find those over at our website, youlivetrue.com. A second thing we've been doing this last year, since a lot of you have been asking, is we've been starting to speak again. We've spoken at some small events like staff training sessions. We've spoken at large events like conferences and worship services, and so we're back engaged in doing that now. And really using that platform, our passion is to be able to pass on to you and people like yourself just practical, insightful, transformational teaching that really flows from decades of what God's poured into us, as well as what's emerged from just our own hard-fought battles to see and live well from our true identity as opposed to our false identity. Thus the name, Live True.
Yeah.
We're doing something else every week as well.
Yeah, we coach. We're coaches for individuals and leadership teams, leaders as individuals and their teams, as well as couples in their relationship. And we help assess whatever's going on in your situation or in your business or some kind of staff situation. And we consult with you and give you our honest feedback on what we observe, and we have all kinds of different packages that we offer for that. And then we want to hear about your unique situation and help you determine the obstacles and design some proven steps to overcome what's still blocking you, either in your relationships or in your marriage and your team. And we want to help you obtain the deepest satisfaction, the highest effectiveness possible for whatever you're involved with.
Yeah. So that leads us to why we're doing this podcast today. We've thought, we've been writing this last year, been doing a lot of that. A lot of people love to learn through reading, but then we know there are a lot of us that we prefer to learn, or we like the auxiliary experience of being able to listen to something. And so we've, through some of the encouragement of several people we're acquainted with, we decided to jump into this very interesting experiment. I know you don't want to tell them what a non-geek I am when it comes to all of this. I've been having to learn it.
It's pretty funny to watch you try to figure out the technology to make this happen. But I'm really proud of you.
Microphones, mixers,
Yeah.
cameras.
Yeah, we're not too old to learn all this stuff.
No, that's
so
right.
It's
That's
pretty
right.
cool. It's
Yeah,
pretty fun.
It is. But let us tell you really why we're doing this podcast, because it fits into everything, the story we've been describing to you so far today in this episode. And, we've just come back to realize again in the midst of all the disorienting things we've been through the last couple of years and really questioning in fresh ways again, who are we? Mm-hmm. What is the remainder of our lives? What's that supposed to be about? And we've just returned again to the fact that we believe at our core, outside of our marriage and friendships and family life, we can't help ourselves. We're passionate and we feel some level of gifting from God when it comes to being spiritual leaders and teachers. And we really desire to use this weekly Live True podcast to help you break through barriers that are hindering in some way your living, loving, and leading from the core of your true identity. What we think you'll find in each episode will be a dynamic conversation around proven and practical spiritual secrets that we believe can revolutionize the way you see yourself, love, and relate to others, as well as be able to do your work with even greater fruitfulness and fulfillment, right?
Yeah, we've helped really thousands of individuals locally and extra locally, couples, leaders in so many different countries. Yeah. And we really promise you refreshing candor as we talk about what we're personally learning through our own successes and failures in all of these areas. And we also want to offer some interviews and insights from some of the world's best spiritual leaders, psychologists, and wisdom teachers. So that's what you can expect.
Yeah. So as we've talked to so many of you in the past couple of years, leading up to what we're doing now here with speaking and coaching and doing these podcasts and blogs, is what we've come to see is that all of us want, first of all, just lasting fulfillment. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all desiring lasting fulfillment in every dimension of our lives. I think a second thing we're all really desiring is to be able to break through barriers that we are coming to understand is preventing us from getting to sustainable fulfillment in our life. And as we've talked to so many of you, we know that you also want a clear pathway in living, loving, and leading. So often the pathway either becomes filled with obstacles or it's complicated. It just doesn't feel doable for a normal person. And we want to help provide that clear pathway. But we also know that you've got a problem.
Yeah,
Not that you've just got a problem. We've got a problem.
We all have a problem.
Yeah, first of all, there's three internal problems going on.
Yeah, and then we found that there are three internal statements that we're all kind of usually battling. And the first one is the statement, I'm not enough. Does that kind of resonate with you? Do you feel at times that you have that little conversation going on through your head? May not be exactly those words, but in general, the feeling is, I am not enough. Something in me.
Sounds like shame to me.
Yeah, something in me is not quite right. Something's broken. Or if that's not the one that seems the most predominant, how about this one? I don't have enough. I don't have enough of what it takes to do something. I don't
like
have
fear to me.
Yeah, I don't have enough material goods. I don't have enough I don't know.
Knowledge, information, experiences, friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Friends on Facebook or something. Right. It could be, I don't have enough of anything that could be a tangible or material or even emotional thing. Or another statement that might be rolling around in there is, I haven't done enough. I'm not doing enough, haven't done enough. I still have so much more to do.
That sounds like guilt to me. Yeah. So we know that we all, in spite of what we want to see happen, what we greatly desire to happen in our lives and our relationships, we've just come to recognize we all have one or more of these internal problems going on. And the way it exhibits itself externally, on the surface, is we all seem to just continually have these cycles of stress and frustration and unfulfillment and unhappiness. I mean, we have really good things that go on as well regularly in our lives, but it's learning how to integrate these polarities that are transpiring in our everyday experience, and seeing if there isn't some part of that that can't be further transformed. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we want to do in light of all that is really act as fellow guides in your journey, because we understand, we get your shame, we get your fear, we get your guilt. I mean, we know what it's like, believe me, to experience, both joy and happiness and fulfillment, yet at the same time to be experiencing great levels of stress and frustration and failure in life. So what we want to do is to share with you the secrets that have led to enormous breakthroughs that are transforming every area of our lives, as well as many others that we've been helping for quite a while now. So in each podcast, what we want to do is we want to give you a raw, honest conversation around what matters most to you, and then tell you about the path that has created some breakthroughs for us in that particular area. What do you think, if we can deliver on just half of this, what do you think are the possibilities for this?
Well, we believe that there's probably going to be some great results, like there'll be more lasting fulfillment in our lives. I know that we have already experienced that in so many areas of our lives, and just some of the great breakthroughs that we've had personally. And just to speak of breakthrough obstructions, things that you feel stuck in, we want to believe that a clear pathway is going to come, or even a specific kind of plan for you to walk toward the future and into the future of your life. More satisfying relationships, for sure, I think, will be a part of what we are able to experience together. More integrated life. And when you say integrated, what does that word mean?
Yeah, most of us tend to view all of life dualistically. Life is either good or bad. We're either up or we're down. It's either black or it's white. And living a more integrated life means to live more non-dualistically, or meaning, what does it mean to blend what Jesus referred to as the wheat and the weeds of our life? What, in the language of the Apostle Paul, talked about good and the bad. Instead of separating those out from each other, what does it mean to integrate those together and to be able to look at them more compassionately, that will result in time in greater transformation?
Aren't we supposed to be getting rid of the bad stuff, though?
We are supposed to be getting rid of the bad stuff. But as we've discovered, if you resist the bad stuff in you, it's just going to come back up again even stronger, as opposed to bringing it in first and looking at it for what it really is, and what's the truth, what's the lie of it, where's it actually operating in my life? And then over time, instead of my letting go of that or having to resist it, it'll end up letting go of me.
Oh, okay. So we're going to help people learn about that. We're going to talk about that together.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I should we offer a money back guarantee with that?
I don't know. It's obviously up to each one of us how we,
Yes,
apply things.
That's true. Okay.
But I've definitely seen how it's working for you and working for me.
Yeah.
So it almost is counterintuitive, though.
It is.
Especially from all of our teaching, everything that we've ever learned and been taught to get rid of this, to get rid of that, to not do this, to not do that, to take on this, or that. So it's certainly counterintuitive to what we know, especially in a lot of our Christian traditions.
Yeah. Gosh, we learned 3.5 tons over that.
Yeah.
A couple other things we think that hopefully all of this will result in these times we have together around these podcasts, is just for you to experience some fresh vitality in each dimension and relationship of your life, where you could experience greater clarity. You know what it's like when sometimes, like in your mind or your heart, you feel like kind of a London fog bank has settled in, and you're just not clear on what you should do next, what you should engage in next. We're going to talk about that. We also believe this is going to result just in a more rested soul. Oh my gosh. Is there a greater gift in all the world than a rested soul?
And a greater need. I don't know if there's a greater need.
Yeah, I agree. And then we hope that you're going to be able to experience just renewed joy and purpose in your life. Gosh, that's our prayer for you, our desire for you, and what we want to help facilitate in some measure for you. So, honey, before we wrap this up today, we kind of started the top of this show by talking about, so why should we live true? Why we created this name? Why do we think about this concept a lot?
Yeah, so why don't we just talk about what all of us experience from the moment we wake up till the time we go to bed?
Yeah. Okay.
Every day.
Yeah. You know, we all have a common experience no matter what our age, what our family of origin is, what our ethnicity is, what time in history we've ever lived. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed every night, every person who has ever lived lives out of who they perceive that they are, that God is, and that other people are. It's really an issue of identity. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, every day we make decisions. We say things, we think things, we react in certain ways, respond in certain ways, and make certain decisions and commitments based upon what we believe is true about our life. But very often, as we know out of our own experience, oftentimes the problem is when we're believing something that isn't true. And instead of taking on what is most true about us, a true identity God gave us the moment we were created, we live more out of a false identity, or what we just called a conditioned identity, where it's just been conditioned in us over time. In fact, it's become so habitual, it's just compulsive in the way we think, react, feel, respond, and things like that.
Everyone else can see this about us, but we cannot see this in ourselves, which is so weird.
Yeah.
That really, we think we know ourselves so well because we live inside ourselves, inside our mind, inside our emotions. And I know for me, I've thought forever that I understood myself really well.
Yep.
I could articulate tons of things that I knew about myself and the way I felt, but I did not always know what was really troubling and tripping me up, and I really didn't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Even if I had been able to put my finger on a few things that I could see, well, maybe I'm a little extra sensitive, or maybe I'm the glass half empty person. I didn't always know what to do about changing my perception and my perspective of myself, to see myself the way God sees me and the way that I actually am created in the image of God. That's resident within me, my true self.
Yep.
And though I knew my life had, quote unquote, been hidden with Christ in God, I didn't know how to live always from that place. I lived more from a place, and still do, obviously, many times a day, live from a different place, that's false self place. That's because that seems to be the most familiar, the thing that we can get is the most tangible, the thing that's been most reinforced.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about talking a whole lot about that, and really how that is the crux of what most of our issues come from.
Yeah. So what we're hoping to do is really two things here. We want to, first of all, help you further discover what's true. What's true has to do with the roots of your life and my life. What's true? What's true in terms of what are the really good things that are there within us? And what's true also has to do with, again, it goes back to that integration conversation a moment ago. You know, what are the challenges, the difficulties, the stress points, the vulnerable points, the primitive emotions of shame, fear, and guilt that exist there? So what's most true about you, God, and other people? So that has to do with your roots. And the second thing is then we want to, from that place, we want to show you how to live true. Live true has to do with what are some rhythms, what are some practices that you can begin to adopt that are things that we have found to be just fabulously helpful in facilitating and helping to participate in what is most true, and seeing transformation come about from that. Yep. Okay, so we'd like to know you. Now you've heard a lot about us, and we're not going to spend that much time doing this each time. We're going to actually have a different topic each week that we'll let you know about. But we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to know, where are you these days in your life? Or perhaps you'd like to tell us where you're stuck or where you need encouragement. Man, we would love to have any questions or comments, and you can send those to us. And each week what we want to do is to be able to respond and answer to at least several of those. The way you can do that, either through giving us a question or comment on this episode, what you can do is go to our blog at youlivetrue.com. That's YOU livetrue.com. And just go to the show notes. It's on the main page there. Go to the show notes for this particular episode that we're calling episode 1, Why Live True.
Why Live True, yeah.
So you can go to the show notes there, and you can scroll down to the bottom of the comment section. And there you can leave a comment, question, or whatever you want to. So a couple of quick announcements. First of all, if this episode's been helpful to you, or you feel like this podcast has the potential to help others that you know, we would really appreciate your recommending this to your friends or family members. And one of the easiest ways to do this would just be to go to our website and click on the show notes from today's episode and just hit the share button, and that will happen.
Well, finally, our next podcast will be on the one argument that we will never win. And it's not the kind of argument that you would expect. So,
we're going to start the next episode with an argument?
Well, not a typical kind of argument, but it is one argument that we will never win. Whenever we question, and whenever I have questioned, if God is at work in my life, all I have to do is see where I'm resisting what is. And that's just a little bit of a teaser
sounds
on what we're about to talk about next.
Sounds intriguing. Well, that's it for this episode, this inaugural, opening, exciting episode of the Live True podcast.
Way to go.
Hey, high five.
High five.
All right there for that.
Yeah.
Way to go. If you're brand new to the Live True, You Live True community, we would love for you to be able to subscribe to the blog that we write each week, or you can subscribe to this particular podcast so it comes automatically to your computer, tablet, or phone. Again, if you want to just listen from your computer, you just go to iTunes and search for and subscribe right there at the Live True podcast. If you're doing this from a tablet or phone, make sure you've downloaded the app from Apple. Simply call podcast and then click to podcast and click on a search and type in the Live True podcast. And then it's so simple. You just hit a button, subscribe, and we subscribe to a number of different podcasts, and it's just so super easy these days. And that way it'll just automatically show up in your podcast app, 24 hours a day or whenever you want to access it. So we'd also be grateful if you'd rate this podcast on iTunes. They give you a super easy way of being able to do that. And that helps tremendously with keeping our podcast visible so people who've never heard it can be able to discover it. Again, if you'd like to read the summary of this particular podcast, then you can just go to the show notes on our website at youlivetrue.com.
So until next time, we want to encourage you to always live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity.